People are still trickling in. Welcome to the first seminar of this year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. I was also asked by Bonnie to hand over the mic to Hannah, who's not here. So I have to say something about Zoom. What should I say, Bonnie?
A Zoom link is available for those people.
Okay, yes. So a Zoom link is available for those people away on field work or who are not here. I guess the people who are on Zoom know that. This is information for the rest of you. So today's seminar will be presented by Victor Cardenas, who's a PhD student in IRES. Victor works both with me and Simon Donner. We are co-supervisors, and Victor has an extraordinary CV. He has degrees in economics and finance and has worked for 22 years at the intersection of climate risk and finance. He's worked for governments. He worked for the government of Mexico, developing catastrophic bonds. You can ask him what that means later. He's worked for the UNFCCC and was instrumental in the Warsaw's loss and damage mechanism. If people follow the climate debate, you'd know that. And he has worked overall in this area of climate risk and financing for a couple of decades. So he's the expert on the topic. Knows a lot more about it than I do. What else? Victor was a climate solutions scholar last year, where he worked on looking at the role of large language models in synthesizing climate information. And today he'll be speaking on the resilience of microfinance industry to climate change extremes. Victor?
Thank you, Milene, for your very kind words. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm so happy to be here. My work here in the PhD program IRES is basically focusing in what is the impact of climate change on microfinance, financial performance of this industry, microfinance. So just very quickly, let me see. My presentation is divided in 5 sections. First of all, I'm going to talk about a new risk, the financial climate risk, and then I'm going to talk and contextualize this new risk in terms of the microfinance. In this context, I would like to put on the table my research questions, and then some preliminary results that I have given this question. And some changes that I'm currently making to my current work. No? And then at the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about the climate change. No, perhaps in a very few words, what is the intention of all these projects? Well, sorry. What is this financial climate risk? Financial climate risk is a new concept, and started in the beginning as a new concept in a big conference by the governor of the England, the Central Bank of England. In that time, the governor warned to the financial sector that the climate change posed a major threat to the global financial stability. Mark Carney, the governor of the Central Bank of England, put on the table a new concept called climate-related risk, that later is better known as a financial climate risk. Financial climate risk is basically a topic important in terms of the financial industry in general, not only the microfinance, any kind of financial industry and any kind of corporates are involved in this concept, because climate change is very complex and is interconnected with all the economy, with all at national level, at industry level, at subnational level, in many levels, this concept is interconnected. So that's why it's important. It's important in terms of public policy, and of course, it's important in terms of regulation. Given the relevance, Mark Carney, as a president of the Financial Stability Board, this big supervisory big entity, with the members of this board is by the Minister of Finance or central bank governors of developed economies, integrate this stability board, and they bring to the table this concept, the climate change in terms of the potential impact to the financial stability. And then they create a task force of climate-related financial disclosures that is TCFD. That is a new concept that started in that moment, more or less here is 2016. The TCFD emerged as a champion in this concept, not trying to promote, originally promoted by Mike Bloomberg through a private foundation. They try to promote among many companies interested in this topic in terms of the climate change and the potential impacts in corporations, including financial entities. Sometime later, actually not 2 years ago, all this effort originally started by TCFD is feeded to the IFRS. I'm going to explain what is that. The IFRS is basically an international organization that designs all the accounting guidelines, how the company reports. Because when you have a company that reports to a stock market, you need to common languages. So in this case, the IFRS regulate all this. Part of that regulation, or part of that guidelines, now are integrated by the regulation for how to disclose the risk to the climate change. No? Climate risk is better known now as a financial climate risk, and used to be a climate-related risk. Climate-related risk is basically the sum of two big concepts. One concept is physical risk. Physical risk means all the potential physical impacts of climate change on the business activity of financial entities, corporates, or whatever business. That potential impact given climate change is physical risk. That is part of the concept of climate-related risk. The other concept is transition risk. Transition risk is basically all the potential effects of the process to implement a new economy with low carbon emissions. No? So that could be positive or negative. But that potential risk is incorporated in the concept of transition risk. So transition risk plus physical risk means climate-related risk or financial climate risk. No? It's important of this concept because I'm going to talk more in detail about that. No? So given that, the Financial Stability Board, this big organization, asked to the TCFD to transfer the responsibility to provide guidelines to the IFRS. So now from the IFRS, they recommend to the countries, means Minister of Finance, of the countries to follow these kind of guidelines. The Ministry of Finance of each country make mandatory basis in some cases, but in general terms, to issue as a public policy how to deal with climate-related risk. So we are in the process to implement this. This happened in 2023, and right now we can see some results of this partial implementation. So there are two big regulations: the IFRS S1 and the IFRS S2. The IFRS S1 is the one that provides general guidelines for sustainability and related financial information. That I'm not to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. But climate-related disclosure is basically this guideline that I mentioned before. In 2023, the IFRS elaborated a survey among many companies, around 3,000, 3,500 more or less companies that are very involved in this process to collect this kind of information about the potential risk. And in general, there are 11 recommendations, big recommendations, 11. Most of them are reporting in 5.5 recommendations. So there is a lot to work that we have ahead, no? Most of the work done is focused in emissions, emissions accounting. If you ask to somebody that is currently involved in climate change right now, perhaps many of those people is working in how many emissions from a particular company or particular sector they are issuing. No, this is part of the work, but actually it's not the real focus on all this regulation. That is not the real focus. No, that is part, the really beginning. But where we are is more in this. Full compliance remains distant, particularly in the case of microfinance. I don't have concrete numbers to show everybody what's going on with the microfinance, but we can figure out what's happening there. If we see here, we have in this column, we have how many recommendations they are working right now in all these sectors. Mostly insurance and energy. They are complying with 5.5, 5.4, and most of them they are focused in the emissions. And the real target for this, the real target is how to incorporate, how to add all this knowledge about the potential risk of climate change in the enterprise risk management, how the company manage not only financial risk, now climate financial risk. Well, that is so far, no, as you can see here. And remember, this is a survey for companies that currently they are involved right now in this kind of concept. No, it's not the whole world. It's a biased sample, no? So we have a lot to do. Then we can imagine, and this is my guess, that perhaps in the case of banking industry, which is not really compliant with all this, and actually, by the way, many of the big banks they are leaving the organization, the big organization about net zero targets, so that, which is very disappointing. So they are part of the company that they are not compliant with this, as many others. No, in this particular case, I can assume that perhaps MFIs are something below this. No, that's my guess, and I'm going to show you more numbers, but this is my guess. And let's talk now about microfinance. Microfinance is just very quickly. A quick fact about this industry that could be in some way very small industry, but in another way, very important industry. So microfinance basically manage around 279 billion in loan portfolios. That is around serving around 173 million borrowers. It's growing a lot. And some analysts estimate that perhaps in 10 years will be double. So on the other hand, on the same kind of numbers, this MFIs is, if we compare with the whole financial system, is really a small thing. No? Perhaps it's not, in this particular thing, perhaps it's not that relevant. No? Or comparing with the banks, it's almost zero. No? But it's important for the people, for the poorest, they are very important. The poorest, if we assess the kind of financing from the low income people in developing and less developed economies, mostly from $1 that is financing this kind of people in the daily life, from the formal channels like MFIs come around 20-30 cents per dollar. The rest is from family, friends, and informal lenders. So in this particular case, it's relevant. It's not the biggest, but it's relevant. No? Okay, it's important for humans. It's important for the rural sector. So it's important for the development of this kind of low-income countries. So one of the criticisms that is important, many people, when we are talking about all these big relevance of this kind of sector, is the high interest rate. Because in some countries, for example, in Mexico, the difference between a bank lending rate and the MFI lending rate could be between 11% to 65%. That's a big difference. But it's true that the operational cost and the risk is different. No, the amount of lending in many cases from the banks to low-income people is almost zero. No. On the other hand, MFIs are specialized in that sector, no? Because they know they know how to deal with that sector. So who runs this kind of MFIs? NGOs, social entrepreneurs, cooperatives, credit unions, state-owned tech entrepreneurs recently. So this is more or less what is microfinance institutions. And on the other hand, this kind of people, the low income people, they are experimenting a lot of this disaster. According to the World Meteorological Organization, they said that climate-related events cause about 2 million deaths worldwide, 90% in developing countries that include less developed economies. Disaster events impact about 93 million people globally, only in 2023. But if you compare with the last 20 years, you can see the difference. No, it's growing up. The people affected by this kind of events. So more people poor are coming, more clients coming. Poverty is a disaster push. I estimate 26 million people in poverty each year. No. So my point with all this number is to highlight that the MFI will be more relevant in the future for this kind of countries. No, it is relevant now. It will be more relevant in the future because of climate change. If the assumption of climate change is that we will have more severe events in the future. So there is a very famous survey elaborated by the World Bank called Findex. And according to them, this is an individual survey. It's very interesting because it's a little snapshot of what happened with this kind of people in these countries. And we found that 1 in 4 adults in low and middle income economies experienced a natural disaster within the past 3 years. So disasters are happening, and the severity of this disaster will be increasing apparently in the near future, not only in the long term. Oh, sorry. Something I did. Okay. So MFI serves a client base in which roughly half are among the poorest, and they are typically the most severely affected by climate events. That's why I believe that something interesting and important is happening right now in this sector. And that's why I decided to work in this topic. I'm proposing 3 research questions. One is, where are the main hotspots located in areas affected by tropical cyclones, floods, and droughts? Disaster climate events are not only this, but most of the data come from this kind of events. So that's my first question. The second question is, how do major events affect MFI financial performance? This is the tricky question, because how to assess this, no? And finally, if something is happening in the past, what kind of things we can expect in the future? How will be the potential impact of climate change following the climate scenarios? So the hotspots, I'm working on that, and this is one example. Sorry, I think it's in Spanish, but basically, let me show you this dashboard that I have prepared here. Well, I don't know what happened, but basically the dashboard is trying to illustrate what happened here. In the color of the countries are the number of people that are clients per country. No? It's here. So if this India is where we have more clients. No? So we have, roughly speaking, the South-South is where most of the clients are. At the same time, you can see the red ones. These line reds are the trajectory of hurricanes. Category 5. The orange is category 4. And the gray ones, this cloud of lines, are below category 3 and below. So here is part of my point. It's more or less, and strong, here you can see a strong correlation between less developed economies, and in this particular case, tropical cyclones, and MFIs. No, so something is happening here. No, so I have similar maps for floods and droughts. No, but this more or less illustrates that something is happening here. No, so some preliminary results. And originally, I'm working with a big database developed by the World Bank called Mix MFI. And this database is basically a compilation of all the financial statements across all MFIs between a long period. I'm starting to work with a model that this model is very interesting because using this database, try to assess all the MFIs. the tricky part here is not all the MFIs, precisely because they come from these kind of countries, the quality of the data will be very low. No? So in general, there are around 3,000 MFIs, but really to be working with all this data is around 500, no? So for example, in my last assessment, I have from all the countries that I report to the World Bank that are 180 something. At the end of the day, I have 85 countries that provide from that. Oh, so thank you. So I need to move fast because part of the result and a little bit interesting because I try to replicate this model. That basically this model, the thing that they are doing is to find how the disasters, this variable that is are affecting the performance of the financial performance of MFIs. The financial performance basically is to create an index of many financial variables and see how this index reacts to the disaster that occurs annually. So I propose to replicate, and I found some similar numbers, more or less similar numbers in the case of Mexico. My idea is to do the same for many other countries. But at the end of the day, the results are, this is the sad part, because my results found some contradictions, because in case of, I'm adding another variables, not only the ones that originally clumps used. I'm using precipitation. However, the contradiction here is for some kind of events, the more severe events is a negative relationship. So, which means that a contradiction, because that more disaster implies less risk. No, in the case of the events in the percentile 95, it is consistent. But and again, the kind of result is not different that other literature found. And this is very interesting. This is the sad story. So this is interesting because many others found some kind of not robust results. That is my point. Even in the case of clumps that in some way are robust, the level of resolution of the results are not that very high. So in my point here is the opportunity to explore more in detail is here. Perhaps I'm in that place. So that's why I decided to change a lot of my work and adding causal inference, and not only work with correlations. That most of the literature is based in correlation studies, and now add causal inference that implies to use more as an experimental approach. No? I'm not going to talk more in detail, but there are a lot of literature that recent literature that using that approach found very interesting and robust results with more strong probabilities, coefficients, and so this is my guide now. That this is the kind of thing that I'm trying to do. Finger crossed. So basically, I'm trying to create a new model, an ensemble of models. This is the idea that I'm trying to implement in my current work. So chapter 3 is basically, just to finalize, is once that I can implement this, the idea is to extend all these and create a credible story of possible futures. Given that I'm designing all the code for all the analysis through machine learning, that is basically all my work now is based in machine learning, I will be able to expand the path to the future, considering this methodology. Sorry, I would like to explain more, but I don't have more time. Happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for coming again.